Hello and welcome to my week 4 multimedia discussion board. My name is Brianna Reeves and I'm going to be talking about public versus private schools. Public and private school are similar in many ways. They both provide education to students. They have extracurricular activities. They typically are around the same time frame when it comes to hours in the day. They have similar staffing, such as teachers, and then leadership, which is usually a vice principal, a principal, there's counselors. Normally the staffing as far as a whole is the same between the two. And even in recent years, public school has really taken on a lot of private schools' policies and programs, such as IT, marketing, and most importantly, they've taken on the customer service aspect of a private school. Graham Allison asked, are they alike in unimportant respects? Even with the adoption of many practices, public schools still differ in the unimportant aspects. The three themes that I'll be talking about that they differ between public and private schools is going to be accountability, the decision making, and then the financial allocations. So the first theme I'm going to talk about is the differences between accountability between public and private schools. So the private school organization really is only accountable to the shareholders, while public schools are going to be accountable to the stakeholders with a legitimate right that influence the decision and services and actions because it is a government service. Since public school is offered to anyone and everyone, and it's basically our civil rights, a Bill of Rights, we as Americans have the right to an education, and that's why public schools are free. You are never turned away. If you live in a certain area, you can go to the school at no cost to you. So because of that, the accountability aspect is a little bit different. Henry Fayol states that management is a dynamic force which makes the business work smoothly and profitability. The survival and the success of the organization largely depends upon the quality of management. So with that, the private school could essentially have this great vice principal, and they hold the teachers at a very high standard because the students, the parents are paying for their education. Where with public school, the teachers really just go through the motions. They're part of a union, so it's a little bit more difficult to terminate teachers based on their work ethic or their testing results, or even the happiness of the students. Because who are they to really give an effect on and the success of the students? Because at the end of the day, whether the students are successful or not, they're still going to teach the class and still get paid for the job. Where in private schools, the teachers don't really have that luxury to just do as they please, because if students are failing, that means either the students can get kicked out of the school and the parents will no longer be funding the education of that student, or the parents will become irate and they're paying thousands and thousands of dollars for this private education and their students are failing because of the teacher's inability to teach them. Which also goes hand in hand with Max Weber's rules and regulations. Private schools have these tough rules and standards that they have for their students, whether it be dress code, behavior, education, successful academics, things like that. So I'm going to try to talk through these themes a little bit quicker because I know it's kind of running on a little bit. So the second theme I'm going to talk about is decision making. Now with public and private schools, what their decision making is very different. For example, COVID-19. Public schools are ordered to stay closed and do distant learning, where private schools are getting the luxury that I know Calvary Chapel, the school in Marietta, they're actually going to be opening for in-person teaching because that's a decision that they can make, because the government, who is essentially saying that you have to stay home, you can't go to school, they don't have to abide by that because their teachers, their curriculum, everything is paid for by the students that are attending the school. And that really brings in the Pause Corps when it comes to planning. I mean, over the summer, the private school was planning how they were going to open up for the new school year. And then the staffing, they wanted to make sure the staffing was okay with interacting with students in a face-to-face and not doing schooling via distant learning. And then it also goes into directing. The leadership team really has to direct the teachers into how to successfully teach during this pandemic. And then also it's coordinating teaching, parents, students, everybody, because this is going to be a transition period right now. And I also want to bring in the Charles Lindenblum theory of incrementalism, because it's really talking about small changes. And right now with the education, it's so different between public and private schools because our current governor and what he's implementing on government services such as public school, they're having to make changes to still continue to provide an education, which is the right of the American people. And with that, I want to talk about my third and final theme, which is the funding and allocations between the two. Private schools generally is funded on their own source, so student tuition, private grants, and endorsements, where public school is funded by government. Public schools funded by the government. So with that, there's a lot of more limitations where private schools can essentially have their own curriculum. They can say, no, we're not going to do the new Common Core, which was implemented by the government. They are going to use the math that we've been doing for many, many years, and it's worked just fine. And because private school is funded by tuition, they can pick and choose who they want to attend. They can have different rules and regulations. They can budget differently. They can put more money in certain areas of the school. They can also report and grade just how they want to, and they want to run the school on anything, really. Where public schools, it's very different. You have to follow the curriculum that's given to you by the government. You have to utilize government funding in certain areas. You have to, you can't just have students. You can't have students, let's say they're going to have gymnastics in school. If they do not have the funds, they cannot just have a gymnastics program. They can't ask for the students to give $200 a month so they can have a gymnastics program. It does not work like that in public schools. And that concludes my multimedia. So I wanted to leave you guys with a quote by Dennis Moore. And he said, when comparing private school and public school test scores, it's like apples to oranges. Public schools have to take everyone, but private schools can be selective. It's not accurate or fair to compare the job they do. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.